Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be one that's important for those who own a Sabertrio lightsaber, especially those or only those that own a Neopixel lightsaber from them with a Crystal Focus 10 soundboard or an FX saber with the Crystal Focus 10 soundboard upgrade, as you can see in their upgrades and add-ons section of their website, which I've mentioned before. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you exactly how to update the firmware for Sabertrio's Neopixel and FX upgraded sabers. This is through their pre-configuration firmware updates. There's a way to do it through Collector Labs themselves, but you'll have a different sound font package, different settings, all that kind of stuff. Sabertrio pre-configures a bunch of settings and has exclusive sound fonts. So if you update the pre-configuration, you can get those sound fonts, you can get their settings. So what I'd like to do is show you how to do this, updating from pre-configuration 4.1 or earlier to now the new pre-configuration 4.2 as released November 2020. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to this link right here, sabertrio.com/preconfiguration-update. And then what you're going to see is this right here, Crystal Focus 10 pre-configuration version 4.2. So this is an update guide. It's going to show you exactly how to do all of this. So what you're going to need first and foremost, obviously either a Neopixel saber from Sabertrio or one of their FX sabers that's upgraded with the Crystal Focus 10 soundboard. This is what I'm going to be using. I'm going to use the Sabertrio Vectra. This is currently running Sabertrio's pre-configuration 4.1. I filmed an entire video showing how to do it from pre-configuration 3.1 to 4.1, and then within 48 hours of me filming that video, they released 4.2. So I thought I'd just do it to 4.2 and redo the whole video. So this is going from pre-configuration 4.1 that's currently on my Vectra to pre-configuration 4.2, which is the newest. So you're going to need your Neopixel saber or the FX saber upgraded with Crystal Focus 10 soundboard. You're going to need the included USB cable, micro USB cable that comes with your saber. There are different kinds of USB cables out there, different kinds of micro USB cables out there from different companies. They use power, some of them use data, but you need to use this one that comes with your saber. You'll also need the included bag that comes with your saber with the Allen wrenches or the hex keys, whatever you like to call them. So you're going to need some form of a micro SD card adapter. I'm going to be using one of these. These are really cheap. There's a micro SD card port right there, and then a SD card port right there. I'm going to be using the micro SD card port, or you can use something like this, which you buy an SD card from Walmart or wherever, comes with a micro SD card, and then it comes with one of these. This looks like an SD card, but it's not. What it is you put this micro SD card into a slot that's on this SD card, and then you plug this into an SD card reader if you have one that's attached to your computer or something. Either way it'll work. I'm going to be using this way because it's just easier and I don't have to put it into an SD card adapter thing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be using this. So you're going to need those things. You're going to need the saber. You're going to need the SD card adapter. You're going to need micro USB cable, and you're going to need the bag that comes with the Allen wrenches and the hex keys, whatever you'd like to call them. So now what you're going to do is you're going to come back to this website and you're going to start reading the update guide. You can follow along with my video. You can do it through this website. It's very easy to follow along, but if you'd like a visual guide, this is what this video is going to be. So what you're going to do here is you're going to see CFX firmware update guide, getting started. In order to update the firmware of your Neo Saber V2, which is all Neo Sabers that are from 2020, that's all V2. The V1 was back in the day, back before like September or October of 2019, so you don't have to worry about all that. So you will need a Windows PC, unfortunately. You cannot do this firmware update on Mac as of yet. That may change in the future, but as of filming November 15th, 2020, this is only able to be done on a Windows PC. So what you'll need to do is download these two things right here. Sabertrio pre-configuration version 4.2. This is the folder. This is what it looks like. All of this stuff right here. This is password protected. So if you're watching this video and you have a lightsaber from a different company that also has CFX and you don't own a Sabertrio saber, this video is not for you. You can't download this until you own a Sabertrio saber and you have proof of that and you let Sabertrio know, because you need to contact Sabertrio for the password for this file. You won't be able to unzip this file unless you have a password. And please, if you do have a password, do not give it to anyone else. That's really not cool. So if you do have a Sabertrio Saber, you're going to go right here. You're going to download it. It's going to be a zipped file. When you try to unzip it, then it'll say that you need a password. You need to contact Sabertrio for that. They'll get to you, send you a password, and then you can unzip the file, and then you'll see something like this. You'll need to do that, and then you'll need to download Docklite v2.3. We'll do that right now. I've done this before, but I've uninstalled Docklite, and then I'm going to just reinstall it so you can actually watch the process. Okay, so once you download Docklite, you can just leave it alone for a second. Don't touch it until we get to that portion later in the video. So what's new in pre-configuration 4.2? This is using CFX version 10.005D, which is the newest firmware version that Plector Labs has released. There are 2 additional sound fonts, which is called Sabertrio and Dark Edition, done by Ksith, which is awesome. The max volume of the saber, this is really important, right here. The max volume of the saber has been capped to 70% to preserve the lifespan of the speaker. This is the same default volume level that all sabers have been shipping with. Only difference now is it is no longer possible to go louder without modifying the special.txt file. Now, if you go into the special.txt file, right here, sets the maximum volume that the soundboard will output. Modifying this setting will void your Saber speaker's warranty, and it's set to 70. So please pay attention to that. Don't void your Saber speaker's warranty because then you won't be able to get it fixed through Sabertrio. So make sure you pay attention to that. So spectrum color changing now detects movements better. Unstable blade effect has been adjusted to flicker at a faster rate. Stuff about OLED display. If you have a Senza, you can read that kind of stuff. I don't have a Senza, so you can see this right here. The H-temp parameter has been increased from 40 to 80. With this, the focus path temperature critical audio warning will only trigger when the board reaches 80 degrees Celsius. In the past, when the board would be around 40 degrees Celsius, it would start saying focus path temperature critical, even though the board actually wasn't overheating. It was just the parameter was set at that 40 degrees Celsius threshold, and that's not dangerous to the board in most cases. So they just increased that from 40 to 80 so that it's actually accurate to what would be dangerous to your board. So if it's hitting 40, it's not that dangerous. If it's hitting 80, then yes, it could be dangerous. And if it is actually telling you that the board is overheating that much, then you need to turn off the saber and make sure your board is safe. Now what we're going to do is install Docklite. Already did that. So you're going to remove the micro SD card from your saber and insert it into a micro SD card reader that's connected to your computer. So I've already shown how to do this in the past in my video about adding sound fonts. If you need to go check that out, go check that out. But it's very, very easy. What you're going to do is you're going to unscrew the pommel. You're going to slide the chassis down a bit. And then you can see right there, there's a little black piece right there. That's the micro SD card. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your nail if you have them, or you can use tweezers if you don't really have nails. And then you're going to slide that micro SD card out of the saber. Once you get the micro SD card out of the saber, there you go. And then you're going to put that into a micro SD card reader. Remember, you can either use one of these adapter things. It's like a SD card. If your computer has an SD card reader built into it already, then you can just use that. But I'm going to use one of these things because I don't have a SD card reader already connected to my computer. So now what you're going to do once you have the SD card adapter, the micro SD card adapter plugged into your computer, this is the most important step right here of this entire process, is make a backup of that micro SD card. So I just created a folder on my desktop, Saber SD card backup. You can call it whatever you want. Just make sure you dignify that it is a backup of what you are about to update. So you're going to go into your devices. It's going to be called Sabertrio most likely. And what you're going to do is you can see all my sound fonts right here. I got 37 of them. So I'm going to copy and paste literally everything. So copy, and then you're going to go into your backup folder that's empty, and you're going to paste everything. It's going to take a little while. Okay, now once you got all this copied and pasted, you can X that out. And the next step is a really important one as well. you're going to have to format this micro SD card. So this is the backup. That's just a folder that's on my desktop. And then this is the micro SD card here. It's just called Sabertrio, and you can see that it's a device. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to format this. So it's very easy to do. You just right click, format, quick format, start. Formatting will erase all data on this disk. To format the disk, click OK. To quit, click cancel. If you have not made a backup yet, at this point in the video, after me telling you multiple times, click cancel, make a backup by copying everything into a backup folder, and then come back to this and then format. Format's complete, simple as that. Now you can see right here, when I open the Sabertrio micro SD card again, it's empty because I just formatted it. So the next thing you need to do is you're going to open the Sabertrio micro SD card that's empty, and then what you're going to do is you're going to copy and paste everything. So this is Sabertrio's pre-configuration 4.2. This is what I downloaded off of their website with my password. What you're going to do is you're going to copy and paste everything that's in here to the now formatted micro SD card. Don't just click and drag the entire folder into the micro SD card, because that won't be in the root directory. It'll be a folder within a folder. So now you just have to copy and paste everything in here into the root directory of this. So you just copy. This is the micro SD card named Sabertrio. Paste, and that's going to take a little while. The root directory of the micro SD card, remember this is going to be called Sabertrio unless you change the name of the micro SD card, is going to look like this. It's going to have all the 20 sound fonts, all the exclusive sound fonts from Sabertrio, including some of the ones that are exclusive to Crystal Focus 10, some of this other stuff right here, colors, config, the fw.dat, which is the firmware update file. So that's critically important right there. Once you do all that, you can just X this out. So you're going to open the config.txt file found in the root directory of your SD card with a text editor. Locate the LED strip parameter and modify its value to the following based on your NeoBlade's length. So remember, go back to Sabertrio, and then you're going to go to the config file. Move this over so you can see it. So you're going to come right here where it says LED strip. That's already 125 for me because I own a 32-inch blade from Sabertrio. So if you own a 36.7-inch blade, which is, I believe that's the default when you go to buy a Neopixel saber, and if you're buying something that's ready to ship, or if you bought something that's ready to ship, I'm not exactly sure what the blade length was. It was probably 36.7, but you need to check to make sure what the blade length is so you can modify these LED strip parameters. So if you have a 36.7, you change this part right here, you're going to change that to 135. If you have a 32-inch blade like I do, this is going to be 125. 30-inch blade, this is going to be 110. If you have a 24-inch blade, this is going to be 90. And if you have an FX Saber that was upgraded with a Crystal Focus 10 soundboard, like they offer in their upgrades and add-on section of their website, like I've talked about before, then you're going to change this, the LED strip, to 0, because there are no LED strips in the blade of an FX Saber because it's an in-hilt LED. Now the next part is you're going to locate the strip power parameter and modify this value to the following based on your blade type. So if you have a Neopixel blade, then you're going to change this right here to 1111. And if you have, like I said, an FX Saber upgraded with Crystal Focus 10 soundboard, then you're going to change this to all zeros. So if you have any changes that you made, then you're going to click save. I didn't have any changes, but I saved it anyway. You're going to close that out. So next step is to safely remove the micro SD card from the reader and insert it back into your Neo Saber. Absolutely make 100% sure you do this safely. You don't want any kind of corruption on the micro SD card. You don't want to have anything messed up on your computer. So right click on it and eject, and then it should tell you that it's safe to remove hardware, and then you can do so. Now I've shown this before in the past in my video about adding sound fonts, but make sure that this side goes like this into the saber. It's very easy, just put it back where it came from. It's easier to do if you have nails, just like ejecting the micro SD card from the saber. And then you'll hear a click. I don't know if the mic picked it up, but you'll be able to hear a little bit of a click when you do that. Now the next step, using the provided micro USB to USB cable, so the one that I showed earlier with the right angle micro USB side, using that cable, connect one end to your Saber's micro USB port and the other to a USB port on your computer. So before we do this, what I recommend is to take the bag that the Allen wrenches, hex keys, whatever you want to call them, take the bigger of the two Allen wrenches, the thicker one. You're going to use this one. And what you're going to do is you're going to unscrew the CoverTech wheel. This goes into the CoverTech wheel, unscrew it and take it off because we're going to need to access the full chassis. And then when you do that, your chassis will now be able to slide out further. And for step 4, step 5, and some of the other steps, you're going to need full access to the chassis. Now be extremely careful when you do this because there are wires and stuff up here that can pop if you do this too forcefully. So what you'll need to do is make sure the CoverTech wheel is off, and then you'll be able to access the full chassis because you'll need to get to both sides of the battery. What you're going to do now is you're going to connect this end to the port that's on the Saber, and then you're going to connect the other end to the computer. You're going to cut power to the board by taking the battery out, and you're going to pull the little white tab that's underneath it to dislodge it. Now, once you take the battery out, you're going to press and hold both the activation and the auxiliary switch, and they're going to reinsert the battery while continuing holding both of them until the small LED on the CFX soundboard stops blinking. So right now mine is blinking really fast and then it just stopped. And then what you're going to do is you're going to let go. And then the LED will start pulsing, as you can see in step 7 if you do it correctly. Now with the Saber still connected to your computer, you're going to launch Docklight. So you got Docklight. Right here it's going to say something about license registration. You don't really got to do that. You're going to press OK. Start with a blank project, blank script, continue, and then you're going to come back to Sabertrio's website. You're going to see they have a project settings window that's going to pop up. So you're going to go to Docklight. Whoops, let me move this over. Project settings. This will pop up, and then you need to pay attention to what Sabertrio's settings are. So COM port settings, send receive on COM. So if you have a bunch of USB devices connected to your computer, I'd unplug those unless it's your Saber. I think this one is probably the one that's going to be my Saber, COM 6. You're going to have to make sure the settings are the same as below. So 11.5.200 for the baud rate, parity none, parity error character, ignore, data bits to 8, stop bits to 1. And then you're going to press OK. So back in the main interface, click on the play button, start communication at the top left corner. That's right here. It just looks like a play button. And then you get something like this. As you can see on their website, it shows the same thing right there. It's going to say press activation to update. So what you're going to do is you're going to press the activation switch on your Saber. It's going to start doing a bunch of stuff like this. I don't know what any of this means, but the board knows how to do all that. And it's going to make a crazy noise. It's going to be the boot sound for the Sabertrio sound font. So after you do all that, once it's done, your Neo Saber has been successfully updated to the latest firmware version. You may now close Docklight and unplug the cable from your Saber. Do that carefully. So you're going to just close this out, save changes. You don't really got to do that. Just say no. And then you can unplug the micro USB cable from your Saber. Now the next step that I recommend is to put the CoverTech wheel back on the Saber because that holds the chassis in retention. So just use that same thicker of the two hex keys to put it back on in place. Now you may be thinking, yeah, I can go play with my Saber, but this is why we made a backup. Remember, now all you have on your Saber is Sabertrio's default settings, default sound fonts, their exclusive sound fonts, all of that. All of your sound fonts that you bought before from like saberfont.com or from Kyberphonic or from someone else, those are now not on this Saber because you made a backup and you formatted the SD card. So Saber SD card backup, this is where all my sound fonts are. So what you're going to do now is if you want all those sound fonts that you bought back on your Saber, if you want your config file to be the same, if you want all your settings to be the same or similar, then what you're going to do is you're going to insert the micro SD card from the Saber back into the computer through a micro SD card reader. Now, once you've inserted back into the computer, you're going to go to Sabertrio, the device, which is the micro SD card. As you can see here, this is the default package. This is 20 sound fonts. This is their exclusive sound fonts and some of the ones from Crystal Focus through Plector Labs and the config file, the fw.dat, all that kind of stuff. So what you're going to do now is if you want to retain all your sound fonts that you had before this firmware update, then what you're going to do is you're going to open your backup folder that you made on your computer. And you can keep all these sound fonts if you want. I mean, you can add all 20 of these. If you have them already, if you already had a Sabertrio Neopixel Saber or the Crystal Focus 10 upgrade to the FX Saber, then you should have all of these sound fonts with the exception of Sabertrio and Dark Edition because they just released those. But if you bought a Saber from fall 2020, then you should have all of these already, except for some of the settings are going to be a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is I already have all of these backed up because I've made several backups of my Saber in the past, and I have all of these, the light all the way through Youngling from 3 to 20. I have all of these backed up already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those and I'm going to delete them, or you can duplicate them and or you can click and drag and make a backup with them or something, but I'm going to delete them because I already have them. Now, once I've deleted all of those sound fonts that I already have backed up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the ones that I had before that I bought or I downloaded. I'm going to copy those and I'm going to paste them into the micro SD card. Okay, so now that you've copied and pasted all of your sound fonts from your old backup into the new SD card folder with the pre-configuration 4.2 updated firmware, what you're going to do is you're going to rename these two. So as you can see right here, I don't know why it did it in that order, but you can see right here, 1, the chosen one hero, 2, chosen one villain, 1, saber trio, 2, dark edition. So if you leave it like that, it's going to mess up the saber and those sound fonts aren't going to work. So you're going to rename these to whatever. You can put them in whatever order you want. I have 37 sound fonts, so I'm going to just name these 38 and 39 and add them to the end. So I've renamed them, added them to the end. So now the important part is the config file that you had on your old Saber with all of your settings, all your blade profiles, all that kind of stuff. So you're going to open that up. So this one right here is the config file that I've had on my Saber for the past few months that I've been making adjustments to. And then I'm going to open the config file that is now on Sabertrio's pre-configuration 4.2 with some settings that you need to change if you are going to have a Sabertrio Saber. So some of the adjustments that they've made are with the volume. Remember, they said that if you change the volume on your Saber to over 70, then it'll void your warranty. So please don't do that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put this to 100 because they put their volume at 100 on the pre-configuration 4.2. And then there's a thing in the specials.txt file that like overrides that. So I'm just going to do it in the exact same manner that they do it. So I'm going to just change this to 100. Remember, I'm making these changes to my old config file because I'm going to be adding this once I make sure everything's the same and correct. I'm going to be adding this to the SD card. And I'm going to take the config file, this one, which is from the new one that Sabertrio gave me directly. I'm going to take this one out and then put this one back in. So I'm going to change the menu volume to 60 because the menu is kind of loud. Now you can see they added a few things like track gesture and font gesture. I'm not too familiar with those, but I'm going to just copy and paste that into my config file anyway. Beep, mute, mute off, sleep, all these things are fine. Switch to switches, all this stuff is fine. There are a few things that you're going to need to change. For example, on the old pre-configurations, there was this setting called Omni Sabers, and now it's called OmniSense, I believe. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to just copy this one from the new one, and I'm going to replace the one from the old one. Not exactly sure what that does or anything, but I'm just going to do it anyway. Make sure that your LED strip parameter is correct. Remember, this is the config file that comes with Sabertrio directly from their pre-configuration off their website, and it says 125, and then mine says 125 because I have a 32-inch blade. And make sure you do that correctly. Strip power, make sure it's 1111. If you have a Neopixel Saber, if it's an FX Saber, then you're going to change that to all zeros, and then you're going to change LED strip to 0. Now the next thing, motion settings, you don't really got to change a whole lot here. Spectrum mode 9 on mine, spectrum mode 9 on theirs. They set their spectrum axis to 0. I have my spectrum axis set to 1. What that does is when you have the spectrum axis set to 0 like Sabertrio has it, that means that you have to rotate the saber like this vertically to change the colors and the blade profiles and all that stuff if you're going into spectrum mode. If you set it to 1 like I have, then that means you rotate it like this. You rotate the saber like a motorcycle handle to change the colors and change the blade profiles and all that kind of stuff. I just find that it's easier. You can change it to whatever you want. They have explanations for everything in the Crystal Focus 10 manual on Plector Labs' website. I just like 1 because it's easier. So below motion settings is the blade profiles. I've mentioned this before. I'm going to go into depth into blade profiles in a different video. But Sabertrio pre-configures, I believe, 7 blade profiles. So it ends at 6, but it's actually 7 because it starts at 0 to 6 blade profiles. There's a few good ones in here. I have like 16 blade profiles that I want to keep. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just keep this as is. I'm not going to really change anything there. So I'm going to keep that. And what you're going to do now is you're going to save the config file. Remember, this is from your backup that was on your SD card before you firmware updated. You're going to save that. You're going to close it out. Close it out. What you can do is you can either delete this config file from Sabertrio, or what you can do is you can take it out, make a backup, which I'm going to do. I'm going to just plop it right there on my desktop. Remember, it should still be in here somewhere. It should be in pre-configuration 4.2. That was directly off the website. You can see it's still right there, config file. And then I'm going to delete it from the micro SD card. And then I'm going to take the config file that's on my backup that I had before, copy, paste it into the micro SD card. So the next thing is colors, the colors.txt. So this is the one from my backup from before I firmware updated, which has been on my Saber for a while. White, I know a lot of people were asking me about that. I set it to 1023, 1023, 1023, but Sabertrio actually recommends putting this to like 750, 750, 750, I think, so you don't max out the LEDs inside the blade. A lot of people were asking me how to get a white blade, and I just told them, you just make 1, 2, 3, these first 3 right here, you make those the same values and you put them at some higher value. Sabertrio recommends 750, 750, 750. I put them to 1023 just to see what it looked like, and it's a very bright white blade, but it probably overloads the LEDs, so I may change that in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this colors.txt from my old one, and then I'm going to take the colors.txt from the new one. I don't think anything's changed at all, really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the one from the new one, I'm going to take it out, plop it on my desktop again. Remember, this is already backed up in the pre-configuration 4.2. So if you lose this or something and you need to go back to it, same with the config file. It's already in this folder that you downloaded off their website. So you can just retrieve it right there and plop it back into the micro SD card if you need to. So I'm going to take this out of the micro SD card and I'm going to delete it. I'm going to take my colors.txt from my backup. I'm going to paste it into the micro SD card. And now I have my color settings that I configured or I changed and all that kind of stuff. And that's now on the micro SD card of the Saber. Now here's something that I've seen when I updated this firmware like I did with from 3.1 to 4.1 a few days ago. And then I'm redoing it because they added a new pre-configuration. But when you update the Sabers firmware, what it'll do is if you have this start_color for a certain sound font set to -1, it'll just default back to green for some reason. Not exactly sure why it does that every time, but it'll default back to green. So like I've mentioned, if you have this start_color set to -1, what that means is you can change the color through spectrum mode and it'll stay like that permanently until you change it again. Or you can change this start_color to say 5 or 6 or whatever color that's in your colors.txt of your Saber and have it set to a certain color permanently. I don't personally recommend setting the start_color to one of those set colors because I like to be able to visually see what color I'm changing it to. So I like to change it through spectrum mode. So most of my sound fonts are set to start_color -1 so I can visually see it. But now when I turn the Saber on again after I take this micro SD card out, all the sound fonts that it's set to -1, it'll be green. So I'm going to have to go in and change it to spectrum mode. It's a little cumbersome, but you know, that's kind of how it works. So that's just something I'd like to mention. But now what you can do is you can take the micro SD card out, remember to eject it. See, it's safe to remove hardware. I'm going to turn the Saber on. I have a blade plug in here. You can see right there, the Dark Edition Reactor blade plug. I'm not going to put the blade in because it's a little cramped right here. So I'm going to use the blade plug that I got. I really like it, so thank you, Sabertrio. This is really cool looking. So now if you've updated it correctly, what you're going to have to do, instead of just pressing the activation switch or pressing the auxiliary switch to turn on the Saber from deep sleep, you're going to have to hold it a bit.
This is where the fun begins.
And this is the chosen one hero from Kaseth. And you can see it's green. This is blue. This sound font is blue. I set it to blue. Now I'm going to have to change it in spectrum mode from green to blue. So that's really easy. Remember, I set my spectrum axis to 1, which means that I rotate it like this. So I'm going to show you how to do that.
Spectrum.
Alrighty, so now we're all good to go. All my other sound fonts that I have set to -1 for the start underscore color, I'm going to have to go in and change those in spectrum mode. It's a little, whatever, but I can do that. It's really easy. So thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, please subscribe. If you have any questions, ask me, ask Sabertrio. They'll be able to help you out a lot better than I can. Refer to the CFX manual if you get stuck on what a certain parameter means. I've covered some of those things in the past. If you have trouble changing the ignition and retraction styles, check out my videos on that. If you have trouble changing the lockups, the blasters, all that kind of stuff, check out my video on that as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and may the force be with you. Hey, this is post-production editing Lando here. I forgot to mention in my video that I will be posting a video after this one goes live showing all the sound fonts, etc. that come directly from Sabertrio with pre-configuration 4.2. Stay on the lookout for that video. It will be coming soon as well. Thank you.